Okay, so before we can do any eye look, like any painting, we're going to need tools. So these are the 4 eye brushes that I do think are quite necessary when it comes to doing eye looks. So let's go through them. The very first one is the most, I guess it would be the most common one that you generally see on the market. These are called shader brushes. Shader brushes are flat to one side, and then you can see they are tapered here. So what they're good for is to deposit color onto the mobile eyelid. So you just press the color down. It's for deposition of color, not really for blending. Yeah, so this one is, for example, the Zoeva 234 looks like that. Now, the second kind of brush you're going to need for more precise color deposition would actually be a pencil brush. So this is, for example, a Sigma pencil brush, and it looks like that. So as you can see right now, it's very tapered. It's much smaller when it comes to the bristle size. So compared to a shader brush, right, you would see that this would actually touch less of your skin, which basically means you can have more control over where you actually deposit the color on your mobile eyelid. So this helps for very precise work, for even underneath the lash line if you want to, because it just gives you a lot more control, a lot more precision. Then it comes to the 2 different kinds of blending brushes that you can actually use to blend out your eyeshadow. Now, blending brushes are essential because they are the ones responsible for giving you that blown out effect without looking muddy. There are 2 kinds. The very first one would be what I call a tapered blending brush. So as you can see here, it's cinched right at the ferrule, and then it just spreads out right like that. So what that does basically is gives you more control over your blending process. So if you struggle with blending, maybe your colors are going too high up, or if you just have smaller eyelids, I do think tapered blending brushes do work better. So this is, for example, the Zoeva Luxe Soft Definer 227. So it looks like that once again, and it is much more tapered and more controlled. The last brush is actually a fluffy blending brush. So if you take a look here, you would see that the bristles, they're all spread out evenly. There is no cinching of the ferrule at all. So what this basically does is it gives a lot more contact with the skin, right? So that means when you blend it, even circular and all that, the bristles touch more of your skin, which basically means the color will be more blown out than normal. So if you do have smaller eyelids, this may not be the best kind of brushes for you to start with until you know how to gain control. So this is the 228 crease brush. So once again, it doesn't have any cinching. It is full diameter all around. So if I maybe show it to you like that, you would realize no cinching at all. Okay, so just a quick recap. These are the 4 brushes that you're going to need for the 3 looks that I'm going to show you later. We have the shader brush right here, the flat one, right? And then we have a pencil brush for more precise control and more precision when it comes to depositing color. Then we are also going to have a fluffy blending brush and a tapered blending brush. Alright, so now let's move on to the different kinds of placements. Okay, so let's begin. Let's take a look at the eyeball first. So please don't judge my drawing, but I tried my best. So obviously we're going to have the eyebrow, we're going to have your eyes, and then of course some of us may or may not have this. It's actually called the crease. If you don't know what your crease is, it's basically when you push in gently, you actually can feel your orbit, the bone. Yeah, so this is the crease, and then this will be called your mobile eyelid. It's the one that moves when you blink. So this is called the mobile eyelid. This is the crease, eyebrow. Okay, so I'm going to now show you the different color placements that we will do today. So there are 3 different color placements that we can actually talk about, and these are actually the basic ones that I feel once you master, you can really do any look, because it's just changing the color combination. Okay, you would realize here I actually labeled the colors. So we have a transition shade, a dark shade, and a light shade. What I usually think these are necessary for, it's because if with these 3 shades, you can actually come up with a variety of looks. So that's what I'm going to do today. For example, if I just use a regular makeup palette, and I'll just show you this. It's from Makeup Geek. Apologies for the dirt, but if you take a look here, You can see, for example, this would work very well as a transition shade. This would work good as a dark shade, and then maybe this for a light shade. Of course, it's up to you to mix and match depending on your skin tone and your preferences, but as long as one is darker than the other, okay, and then the transition shade would be something that is pretty similar to your skin tone, but not too dark, yeah? Of course, cool tones, warm tones, that's also up to you. So let's start with the very first eye look. So this is called the darker outer V. So as you can see here, we have the transition shade above the crease and in the crease. Transition shades are very useful to help your eyeshadows blend nicely and to create that soft gradient instead of it just being chunks of eyeshadow on your eyelid. And then you can see here on the outer part of your mobile eyelid, there will be a dark shade. And then, of course, the inner 2/3 of your mobile eyelid would be the light shade. This gives the effect of lifting. So generally, what we always like to do is, if you find that your eyelids droop a little bit, putting a darker shade on the outer would actually cause to give the illusion of it being slightly lifted. So this, once again, is called the darker outer V. The second one is actually what I call Halo Smoky Eye. So as you can see, the darker shades are actually on the inner and outer thirds of the mobile eyelid, and then the lighter shade is right in the middle. And then again, we have the transition shade above the crease as well as in the crease for that smooth gradient. Now what this does, basically, it draws attention to the middle of the eye, and it actually makes your eyeball look a little bit rounder versus the top one, which actually makes it look more lifted. So this one just gives your eye, make it look a bit larger, a little bit more round. Again, 3 different shades, but it gives a different illusion. Okay, so once again, this is the Halo Smoky. The last one, apologies for the correction tape, but the last one, actually, I didn't even use the light shade. I only used the dark shade and the transition. So you would realize this one is more for, I would say, suitable for Asian eyes, very suitable for monolids as well, if let's say you don't have the crease. What this does is it draws attention to your lash line. So the darkest shade, super dark shade, would be on the lash line itself, and then you slowly work your way towards a lighter shade all the way upwards towards the brow bone. So you can see darker, slightly lighter, and then again you have your transition shade in the crease and above the crease to give that smooth transition. 2 eyeshadow shades can be used because how many times you layer can actually intensify the eye color as well, or intensify the pigment as well. So 2 eyeshadow shades is basically what you need for this kind of look. And this is called the gradient, the dark to light gradient. So let's recap. Dark to light gradient look. We have the Halo Smoky Eye. And then we have the darker outer V. So once you get these 3 placements down, any color variation will actually give you a large variety of eyeshadow looks that you can do. So now we're going to move on to the eyes. So as you can see, this is my eyeball, and before you even apply any eyeshadows, usually you would like to prime your eyes. So what I'm just using here actually is just a regular concealer, and then we're just going to dot that here to provide a little base for our eyeshadows to go on, because eyeshadows are powder after all. And then what basically it does is adding a layer of cream or primer or things like that will actually help your eyeshadow powders to actually adhere to your skin a lot better. So after priming your eyes, you should always try to set your primer, because setting your primer will actually kind of prevent any skipping, so that your eyeshadows, when you're blending it, it doesn't really skip on the eyelid itself, so that it's a more smooth base to begin with. So I'm just going to set my eyeshadow with any bone shade. Here I'm just using a face powder. So if you actually feel your eyelid, it's a lot more smoother, and then what that's going to do is powders will actually go onto it much easier. Okay, so for demonstration purposes, this was the palette I showed just now. So I'm going to use this as my transition shade. This will be my dark shade, and then this will be my lighter shade, okay, for all 3 looks that we're going to do, so that it's easier for you to actually see it. So the very first thing is we always want to grab our transition shade first. I'm using a fluffy blending brush. If let's say you don't know where your crease is, very simple. If you just feel it, feel your eye bone, you will actually feel there's a bone here. That is called your orbital bone. And then if you press it down towards that area, you would see it forms like a C shape on your eyelid. So that basically is where your crease is. Or actually, if you look at my eyelids right here, you can actually see I have a fold of my eyelids right there, so that can work as well. So here we go. You can do windshield wiper. Again, if you want to, you can also do circular. So if let's say I use a fluffy one, I'm going to get a lot more color deposition all around my eyelid, versus if let's say I use a tapered one, because the tapered one will actually fit in here and it touches less of my skin. I'm going to go in a little bit again with my transition shade. So as you can see, just the transition shade in the crease, slightly above the crease. Okay, ignore if it goes a little bit below, it's fine, because you're still going to put color onto it later. So now taking your pencil brush, any pencil brush will do, I'm just using this one, the darker shade right here. You want to place it here. Okay, so you can see deposition. And take a little bit more. It's okay if it looks patchy now. Just focus it on the outer part, just like that. Okay, you can even draw it up like that. What I'm doing is basically kind of making it into a V shape or a triangle. Okay, now some people call this the outer V because they do kind of bring it out a little bit here as well. So as you can see, there's a V shape like that. Then you can go back to your blending brush and then just blend it away. Now if you struggle, if you feel that your eyeshadows are not blending as well as you want it to be, all you can do is you can go back into your transition shade, take a little bit of that, tap off any excess, and then just go over it so it smooths out the color. Now if let's say it exceeds, okay, don't worry too much about that. You can always use concealer to clean it up. So we're just gonna blend it like that. I'm doing circular motions here because I want to kind of bring out the darker color a little bit more for myself. That's the look I like. Yeah, so just do that. So you get something that looks like this. You can of course leave it like that if you want to. Now again, if you think you need it to be a bit more, if you want it to be a bit darker, more intense, you can go back. So I'm going with another layer. Yeah, so it looks something like that. That is it. So as you realize right now, you can see that with my eyes opened, the darker shade actually pushes this area back. So then it looks a slightly lifted. Show you the blending with the tapered brush. You can again do windshield wiper like that. I like to do this because I'm bringing my brush to smooth out the edges of my this dark shadow that I placed earlier, okay? But you can again do circular if you want to blow out the color even more, and then windshield wipe, and then your dark shade is pretty much down. Now this part here, don't worry too much about it. You're going to put the shimmer shade all over it. So 2 shades down, we're now going to move on to the shimmer shade or the light shade. Using a shader brush, I'm going to dip into the shimmer shade right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press it on the eyelid like that. And then as you come towards the part with your darker shade, you just lightly tap. Tapping it helps to kind of not put so much color on, so it blends a bit easier for you. Now if you want to, you can again use the shader brush and shape how you want the color to be, but pressing the color down will give you more pigmentation as compared to swiping. Taking the blending brush one more time, we're going to blend. Now blending the light shade doesn't take too much effort because shimmer shades generally are easier to blend. So just some light strokes here and there. And there you go. If you want to use eyeliner, you can. If you don't want to as well, it's perfectly fine. So as you can see, if let's say you don't like this, all you can do is, you know, the concealer that you used just now, you can just take a little bit. Let me show you how to clean up. Just a little, yeah, like that is fine. I have a bit of dark eye circles, so I'm going to cover that up too. You can take the point, you see it's flat, and then you point it like that. Yeah, so you can use your concealer to clean it up, to make it a little bit more neat if you want it to. I generally don't like it to be too, straight. So what I'll do is I'll take my finger and I kind of just diffuse that even more. Okay, so there you go. If you change any color, if you want to, you can put like a blue, a brown, and you know, your transition shade, you get a blue smoky eye. If you do like, let's say you do a purple and a dark blue with a transition shade, that can work as well. So basically, once you understand the placement of the color, the transition shade, lighter color and darker color, you basically can manipulate all the shades to create your own looks. So now let's move on to the next eyeshadow placement. This is how it would look like roughly with eyelashes. If you really do these kinds of looks, usually having eyelashes that are longer at the ends and shorter in the middle, shorter at the beginning, will actually help you to give that lifted effect even more. Okay, so I think for the second look, I'll show you on my other eye. So then later you can actually see that they're very similar. It's just that the color placement is a bit different. So let's begin. So same thing, before you even put eyeshadow on, always put your primer or your concealer. Any kind of cream base would work. So I'll just put a little bit here and I'll blend it out. Something like that would do. Okay, so once your cream base is even, what you need is to set it down with a powder so that all the powder shadows that you put on top doesn't skip. So again, I'm going to use my face powder, and I'm just going to dab that on with my black brush, just to smooth it out. There. Okay, so this is how it looks like right now. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to put again the transition shade into the crease and above it slightly. So I can use the same fluffy brush, dipping into the transition shade, the one in the middle, tap off any excess, and here we go. So as you can see, I'm just using windshield wiper here, and then if I want to, I can circular motions out a little bit. Now you would hear a lot of makeup tutorials where they actually ask you to hold the brush at the end, but what happens, I feel, is that you really don't have, I mean, I can do that, but it doesn't feel like there's a lot of control. So I would still hold it somewhere in the middle, and then just use a little bit less pressure so that your blending would actually be a bit more seamless as compared to just pressing it down onto your eyelid. So just windshield wiper and a bit of circular motion, and you have your transition shade down. Now the next thing is we're going to take the darker shade on the pencil brush again. Okay, dipping into the darker shade right here. I'm going to put it like how we did previously. We're going to put it on the darker we're going to put it on the outer part, and then we are also going to put it now on the inner part, like that. So having a pencil brush is good because it helps you control how much you put. So something like that. It looks messy right now, I know, but don't worry, it will come together eventually. So as long as you place the color, you're pleased with where the color is placed, then you take your blending brush again, and to ease the blending, put a bit of your transition shade on it, and then slowly work the edges, work at the edges so that it looks a bit more smooth. Circular motions can help take the color out. Okay, windshield wiper, you can bring it in to connect it slightly, like that. If you feel like it is looking patchy, it's okay. Take a bit more transition shade, press it on the edges of your dark shadow. Press it first, yeah, and then after that you blend it. So then what it does is actually it helps to merge two of the shades together, giving it a more seamless look. So for example, this part I need it to blend a bit more, and I would like it to blend a little bit higher. So I'll take a circular motions like that. Okay, and then I'll do this again, because for the inner corner I don't want it too high. That's usually where you look a little bit punched. So just staying it here, so windshield wiper is good. So then I think I'm quite pleased with how the blending is looking right now. So what I'm going to do now is I'll put the middle shade using the shader brush and the lighter shade right here. Same thing, I'm going to press it instead of swiping it because it gives more color deposition. Now, it's okay if you want to move it a little bit over the color with the darker shades that you've placed. It's fine. So it gives a little blended effect as well. There we go. Okay, and then same thing. Don't just leave it like that. You try your best to blend it again. So take the blending brush. Just slowly work it in. You don't want to go too hard at it, because then what's going to happen is all your effort of placing the shimmer shades will disappear. So just lightly merge the shades together and you pretty much have something like that. Same thing, I'm going to put some false lashes on to show you the effect. So for halo eyes, usually if you want to, the better, the more suitable lashes to emphasize the rounded effect would be something like that, where the longest lashes are actually at the middle of the lash band versus the edge. Basically gives your eye a more rounded effect, and it kind of gives it a little bit of a larger illusion. Okay, so I've started again with a primed eye, and now we're just going to do the last look, which is basically just using two shades, and it's a gradient. The darkest always on the lash line, and then it goes lighter as it reaches towards your brow bone. So for this step, actually, I'm not going to begin with the transition shade. Usually what I'll do is I'll take my pencil brush and I'll put it on the darker shade first. So we're going to take this, yeah, and we're going to actually just draw a line along the lash line, something like that. Okay, I know it looks a little scary right now, but it's okay. I know pencil brushes aren't meant for blending, but I'll just slowly use this brush, whatever's left, not dipping back in. I'm going to just slowly bring the color up, ever so slightly. Okay, don't worry if it goes out, actually we can clean it up with concealer. I'm dipping it one more time to the eyeshadow, and I'm just going to press it down towards the lash line, because I want the darkest to be on the lash line and then fade outwards. Okay, so now it looks something like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tapered blending brush, yeah, the one that's tapered. I'm going to dip into the transition shade, and I'm actually going to start pressing it first onto the harsh lines. I'll just press it down. Okay, and then after that I will dip one more time, and then I'll do the windshield wiper motions all the way in the crease. So I'm just using the transition shade to help even things out without it being too harsh. I don't want blocks of color, I want a gradient. Okay, so then again, if let's say you feel that, for example, your colors are not going smoothly, like for example I have a patch right here in the middle, it's definitely we can definitely fix that, so don't worry. So once you're satisfied with the color in your crease, meaning the intensity you would want inside the crease itself, you can actually take this brush, the tapered blending brush, and dip into the darker color. So I'll show you. Take this. You're going to dip into the darker color now with the fluffy brush. And then what you're going to do is you're going to tap off any excess. And then use this fluffy brush and press the color down. I'm just lightly tapping it on my lids. So then you can realize the patch actually has been reduced. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to windshield wiper again to blend everything out. Alright, so it should look something like that. If you want to intensify it further, which I do recommend, so if you want to draw more attention to the eye, take the pencil brush again and just draw a pat in of a bit more of the darker shade along the lash line. Like so. Okay, and then what you're going to do is, again, just one last time, smooth everything out. So it should look something like that. I do think that, let's see, a little bit patchy, so I'm going to take my tapered brush again, press that down. And then windshield wiper. There. So this is the last look. It's called the gradient. So the darker to the lighter. It adds a lot of definition and works great if, let's say, you don't have the crease, the fold right here. So if you just have a monolids, meaning you have a lot of skin covering the crease, for example, and you don't know, you know, if a lot of looks demand that you put colors in the crease and you don't know how, it's fine. This method works really well because you just work from the lash line onwards and you just move upwards slowly. So this is roughly a look you can do. You can change the colors up any way you want. In fact, you don't even need to do dark to light. It can be a transition shade and just another color all over the lid. It doesn't have to be, you know, a gradient if that's what you want. Yeah, so it's gonna look something like that. This one I generally prefer to do it without lashes, but if you do again want to include it, it will definitely be fine. It's personal preference. So these are the 3 eyeshadow placements. Now you can do anything you want with these. You can change the color up, you can change even how many colors you add, so you don't always need to use 3. You can always do more or less, it's up to you. Yeah, so these are the basics, or at least what I feel are the basics, and then once you get that down, you can just change the colors, be your own artist, and then you have all the looks waiting for you to try. Alright, thank you. Bye.